Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everyone, it's Debbie, and I am going to talk to Jim Howard today. He has been in the tech industry for health products for 28 years, and he's a current CEO of Readout Health. He's a co-founder, and they are the ones behind making Biosense, this device that I've been testing out lately. It's a medical device that tracks the fat burn trends, providing real-time feedback on exercise and food for behavior modification. Jim lives in St. Louis with his wife and young children and has greatly benefited from a low-carb lifestyle since 2018. Jim himself was an athlete, a college athlete. He had 6 surgeries and lived a life of debilitating inflammation by 50 due to a high carb, essentially low fat diet. His wife had cancer and was on the ketogenic diet, and he caved in, and the results were immediate for his own body. He was later introduced to the researchers that were working on Biosense breath ketone technology. 3 patents later, here they are. Today, we're going to talk all about it. He now runs the most innovative company in the biomarker metabolic research world, working with pharma researchers and consumers. So today, we're going to dial it in towards the athlete. How can the athlete use this device? If you want to learn more about this affordable, I think very affordable, Biosense breath test to find out if you are burning fat and ketones or not, and then using that data to figure out your fueling and training. And really, I think it'll be fun to dial it in for the female athlete when we can make sure you're not showing ketones in that ovulation and late luteal phase. So I've been really geeking out on using training peaks and matching their biometrics for the female athlete, matching their biometrics with their exercise and the day of their cycle, if you're premenopausal. But today we're also going to talk to Jim about all sorts of things about Biosense, but you can save $20. Use our code LOWCARB20. Check it out in the show notes. Find their website link with our code LOWCARB20 to save $20 off this great new device. We'll talk about who needs it, lessons on breath testing ketones, and he'll explain it. We're going to talk about the importance of getting biofeedback throughout the day to get those metabolic biomarkers, and what is nutritional ketosis, how's it helping us, and when should we not be in ketosis is what I ask about, and the impact of certain levels of ketosis on inflammation and recovery. All about this. They get more focus in mental health, cancer tumors for their research, but we're going to talk about this information for you, the endurance athlete, and how we can use it for myself as a coach to personalize my coaching program for my athletes to figure out their stressors, their sleep, their movement, their nutrition, and exercise, of course, but really getting this biofeedback along with an Aura ring, for example, and NutriSense would be pretty fun. And the metabolic flexibility, cyclical keto, we know as athletes, we hear, matching our nutrition, our fueling with our exercise. Less is more. Sometimes more is not better. So really figuring out your strategic carb timing, and if you need carbs, if you have goals for performance gains, sometimes you want more real quality food source of carbs, and when to add those in. That's something we work on as an individual, as not all carbs are evil. It's what we're eating, the crappy processed foods, vegetable oils, refined flours, and refined sugars you want to avoid. So you want to get more, your carbs are going to be more the vegetables and berries that are in season, not eating them from Mexico when you live in far away in the wintertime, but eating by the season, more ancestral health, and then looking at timing your exercise and nutrition together. So if you're doing a glycogen depleting workout, there's your window after you work out. And if you're working out twice a day, you might be able to alternate adding in some carbs there, still staying in a fat burning state. So this is a good way to experiment with what amount are carbs good for you to keep you burning fat, but we want to be metabolically flexible, not be forgetting about our carb metabolism. And, listen to Jay Feldman in our recent podcast talking about energy metabolism, and you still need ability to burn carbs because as an athlete, we are burning fat and carbohydrate, especially if you're doing any race pace, simulators, racing itself, and you're challenging yourself, pushing yourself, sprinting, doing any high intensity interval training, you are going to be out of fat metabolism. You're still more fat adapted. You can tolerate, or not tolerate so much as burning a higher percentage of fat at higher heart rates. Your fat oxidation rate will change, but you're not burning only fat. You're burning some carbs. And I think people taking ketones during a workout, well, it depends what type of exercise you're doing. If it's more brain focused, demanding as a Tour de France cyclist racing or adventure racing, or when you're getting brain fatigue, that might help. But that's kind of stuff I work with my clients individually, because there is not one size fits all. It's so like a template we start with and then figure it out. But that's why I really like Biosense, because we can learn more about how your body's responding to food. But you have to remember, stress impacts everything, and not getting good sleep impacts everything. So we can't just focus on what you are eating, but it's the what, how, when, and why, but also how are you sleeping? How are you starting your day? How are you ending your day? How are you moving throughout the day? Are you sitting the rest of the day after your workout? Are you walking after your meals? Are you getting in little movement snack breaks? And then digestion, gut health. Everyone I work with has some dysbiosis, some parasites, yeast overgrowth. We've got a lot going on, hidden internal stressors that you have sometimes no idea that they're going on. So we want to look at that whole picture to be fit and healthy from the inside out, but testing and not guessing with something as Biosense, a CGM as NutriSense, getting an Oura ring. Everything costs money. So there's some things that we can do that doesn't cost money, and kind of learning about your intuition to fuel and train your body to be fit and healthy now, but also, as I say every episode, training yourself for your future self, training when you're 80, 90 years old. How are you going to be thriving every day instead of struggling to survive the day? So taking ownership of your health now, investing in your health with devices as this, working with a coach that's going to actually look at your lab results and put the missing pieces of the puzzle together. I recently was just looking at my blood work that I had done almost a year ago, because I'm ready to get new blood work, but the doctor didn't test everything I wanted to get tested, so I had to order them through Ulta Labs or DHA Labs or Direct Labs. You can order your own labs. But I put information of the blood chemistry results into our FDN coach practitioner, our spreadsheet, and a functional range is much different than the doctor's range. And then I go through each high or low marker and write out what does that correlate to. And I put it in a chart. And then I highlight patterns I see and work on seeing patterns, correlations to your symptoms that we do nutritional therapy analysis. For example, I look back at my eosinophils were 9% last year. They're supposed to be between 0 to 3. That's extremely high. But did the doctor do anything and think that was alarming? No, they just gave me results. I got them in the portal, and I didn't get anything further than that. It was not any alarm to them. What does that indicate? Well, on my little cheat sheet here, I put on my chart I make for clients and this for myself, but intestinal parasites, food, environmental allergies, sensitivities, asthma, intestinal parasites can be high, monocytes, basophils, food allergies can be also histamine related. GI pathogen stool analysis to test for parasites would be a good additional test to your blood chemistry, as well as an adrenal hormone panel as a Dutch test, and a food sensitivity test as with the Cyrix labs, which are the gold standard but very expensive. There's MRT that's less expensive, your IgGs, or there is the Vibrant Wellness Zoomers that I often do with clients and myself. So just example of how testing and not guessing is so essential, and also to collect all this data from multiple sources to help really personalize your fitness and health and nutrition program to improve fat loss, improve your performance, and most of all, should be focused on longevity. And as you know, my dad just passed away at 80, and all that lack of movement, the nutrition, all these things that we can do that are choices. And our parents didn't get that education. The doctors didn't help them. They just gave them more medications and drew more blood and did more kidney dialysis and caused more problems, as for my dad at least. But I think a lot of doctors are just prescribing multiple medications that are interfering with each other. And like my dad had 3 different doctors trying to help him for thyroid. I'm looking at my thyroid labs, looking at his heart health, looking at his kidney health, cancer, and then they don't communicate. So really focusing on what you can do now so you don't get to that point. Taking that ownership, taking control now. Self-care is self-love. So lab testing, getting this blood chemistry, what you can done under insurance is what I first start with people. And I'm just going to finish this and we'll get Jim on the show. But the thyroid panel that the doctor gives you is crap. It says often just TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone. If that is high or low, well, that could be a sign of hypothyroidism, but the TSH is a measurement of your pituitary gland. It's thyroid stimulating hormone, which comes from the pituitary gland, not your thyroid. We want to also look at total T4, free T4, total T3, free T3, T3 uptake. And for sure, I want to see clients reverse T3, which is the brakes. When cortisol is up and your body's under constant stress, that chronic stress impacts everything, including putting everything else on hold. Your immune system, you get gut issues, and your thyroid is going to slow down because your body is all trained. Its own innate intelligence is brilliant to help save us. So we're going to take all reserves and make us stay and fight the battle of whatever stress we have so we don't get killed and eaten by a lion. So reverse T3, I want to get people get that measurement. We want it under 15 and reverse T3, and then the antibodies for TPO antibodies, any thyroid antibodies, maybe that's related to Hashimoto's. And so we want to get a look at all this. The other markers I'd like to look at, vitamin D. Doctors aren't testing that. I had to ask and I still didn't get it done. Insulin, your hemoglobin A1C, and the commercials on TV are totally wrong. You want it between 4.5 to 5.5 on your A1C, not being up above 6. I don't know what they're talking about. The doctors, commercial ads want you on that pharmaceutical drug, not to get off of A1C or lower your A1C and your insulin. They want you off medication ideally, but they don't. They want you to buy more insulin medication. Homocysteine, another marker we should get looked at. Mine was 11, super high. We want it 6 to 7.2. What is homocysteine related to? Well, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, depression, mood disorders, nutrient deficiencies as folate, B6, B12, MTHFR, SNPs, B12, folate deficiency. So we look at patterns. If this is homocysteine's high along with your MCV, your MCH, RDW, and MCHC and LDH, those are signs of something else going on. A B12 folate deficiency, vitamin B6, as I said, can be shown if we look at the patterns. Homocysteine is high if GGT is low and ALT is low. So we look at these patterns. There's so much to look at in these lab tests, and doctors aren't able to have the training in that or spend enough time because they're busy. Histamine, CRP, magnesium, B12, those are other markers you can get in a comprehensive blood chemistry panel test. So make sure you're getting that full lipid panel, your iron panel, and of course your just regular comprehensive metabolic panel they do, but get these liver enzyme markers, the LDH, the AST, ALT, and the GGT. And of course, hopefully they do not just cholesterol, but triglycerides, the HDL, LDL, and then the complete blood count they usually do. And the iron panel, I don't see a lot of, but iron, TIBC, iron saturation, ferritin. Now, ferritin I see low and high in a lot of people. And an example of my ferritin was 35, and it should be 50 to 100. And that's a sign of iron deficiency, anemia, heavy metal toxicity. And then we see other patterns. Again, looking at iron deficiency, we see other markers that correlate together. There's a big list I won't read off, but oxidative stress and functional tests to correlate with this ferritin marker would be the GI pathogen stool test, organic acids test, oats test, we say, detox markers we want to look at in heavy metal toxicity. So a lot to look at. So that's my blood chemistry panel, just mentioning that, but testing and not guessing. So using Biosense, NutriSense we've talked to a few times. Cara Collier is awesome at NutriSense, and working with the coach, not selling myself, but just work with someone that can help you. If it's just once a month, like I do a new client special, look at what you're doing, what we can do differently, and then meet with people once a month or more. But, I think it's really important to invest in our health because the exercise we're doing can be causing more damage than good. So if you want to improve the whole you from the inside out, make sure you're working on not just your nutrition, exercise, but prioritizing sleep, not burning the candles at both ends, managing your external stressors, using your breath work to help relax, measuring heart rate variability, and all the other elements of the holistic method. So let's dive into Biosense, and I'll stop boring you, but I just needed to vent a little bit because I'm so tired of people not getting the right labs done. Okay, here we go. Hey everyone, it's Debbie, and I am just setting up for my podcast interview to talk about this new device. You see the video on the Low Carb Athlete podcast YouTube channel. Biosense is this new test, breath, to measure my ketone level. And we're going to talk about the science behind it with Jim. And I've been testing it out, reading about it, trying to remember to take it because you can not have anything 60 minutes before. So you have to wait 60 minutes to use Biosense after eating, smoking, vaping, drinking flavored beverages, or using products as toothpaste, mouthwash, cough drops, breath mints, chewing gum, lip balm, and artificial sweeteners. After consuming alcohol, wait until the next day to use Biosense. But you can see there's a chart, and that's what we're looking at when I test. And we'll talk about how it works and what is an ACE, ACE, just is my measurement I get. Biosense trace ketosis, ketones is 1 to 4. Low ketosis is 5 to 9. Moderate ketosis on here is 10 to 29. High ketosis is 30 to 40. So the color scale indicates which measurement lies in the spectrum of ketosis. So there's a chart if you're watching the video that comes with it. So it comes in this little box, and it's kit. It recharges backside there. And I just had a sip of coffee. So that's the device. I turn it on. It prepares. And then when it's ready, you can see in my Instagram picture video, I did a little 1-minute example of it, but it prepares. Then you breathe in and then take a little exhale out through this device. So we're going to talk to Jim Howard about the science behind it. How can we use it to find out our metabolic flexibility, our metabolic efficiency when we want to be cyclical keto as endurance athletes, because ketosis all the time is not ideal. We still need to have metabolic flexibility, shift back to carb burning, and knowing when to do a little extra carbs and get out of ketosis so we have that ability. So this won't be accurate because I just drank, but that's what it's doing. It's measuring and then hooks up to my phone, and we can look at my results. We'll talk to Jim about their app, which my phone's over here, and then go through the meaning of everything. So let's dive into the science behind it. Why do you need this? How can you use it to improve your fat loss, performance, and longevity is what I want to bring you this information to you for your training and fueling to figure out more personalized program. Because as I say, test and not guess. So let's bring on Jim and dive in. All right, gang. Jim Howard is here to share his story and about Biosense and how we can improve our fat loss, performance, and longevity, as I'm all about improving our future self and being fit and healthy now and fit and healthy when I'm 80, 90 years old. So Jim's going to help us figure out how we can do that. or share the stories and tips how to get there, right? So thanks, Jim, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So what I like to start with, as I was just chatting about, is explaining your why. We talked about this in our intro. We're talking about Biosense and what it is today, and we're going to go over the purpose of it. But there's always a story behind someone creating a product.
Right.
What is your why? I mean, there's just so much work to come up with something. And I always have great ideas, but I always admire people that, bring it to life, and because it's a lot of hard work, hours, and dedication.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm the CEO of Readout Health. We make the medical grade ketone breath monitor and solution that goes, digital solution that goes behind that, for consumers and patients and research too. And I got involved because, essentially my wife, for therapeutic reasons and a chronic disease, was using, was tracking her ketones, was kind of doing some metabolic flexibility work with ketogenic diet, fasting, kind of a mixture of all, and having some success. And I just kind of got pulled into that, and because I didn't like making two meals, and I did. And I'm an athlete, ex-college athlete. I'm a runner. I had 6 knee surgeries, and I had just got to the point of bone on bone, real issues with inflammation. I have a right knee that was double the size most of the time. If it rained, I couldn't really do any training. And that's it. That's the reality. About 4 ACL surgeries and just the normal stuff that comes with being, 50 years old. And I had young kids, and I couldn't carry them up the stairs.
Wait. You said the normal stuff when you're 50 something. Now, I always say don't use age as an excuse, but it's more of what we did. It has nothing to do with your age. It's years of damaging yourself and the way you were living your life.
Yeah, exactly. And I certainly didn't rebound to injury like I used to. So I think I was a pretty typical athlete. I was probably doing, 300 to 400 grams of carbs a day, no fat. I was following the pyramid. I was doing all the things that you're kind of supposed to be doing. And I really just started learning about lipid metabolism through my wife. And that was it. I mean, everyone has their reasons to do something. Is it performance, athletic performance? Is it vanity? Like I want to look better, lose weight, whatever. Or is it I'm my deep health or my health span? And that's, your overall wellness. So whatever the driver is, doesn't really matter. For me, it was really the impact of performance was so fast. My knee, I hadn't skied in 10 years, snow skied. So I, really within about a month, I saw really significant improvement, was not able to monitor the details of my physiologic response. Like, where do I need to be in this? I was doing a lot of fasting. All I really cared about is I can carry my kids up the stairs. At that point, I was able to run again and start to pick things up. And I didn't know what that magic was. And then at the same time, I worked at a venture firm, and this whole project, this scientific project aimed at diabetes reversal, was kind of put on my lap. And they said, well, you look at this. And I'm like, yeah, I know a little bit about this. So we validated the patents and all of that. And next thing you know, Biosense, we were bringing it to market. And I run the company now, and the founders that were building this for obesity and for type 2 diabetes. All I cared about is it helped me from an athletic perspective. And it, really on the inflammation side and the performance side, I'm still tweaking as we go, but really inflammation and recovery was such a big part of my own personal journey.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think it's important as we're chatting about that. Athletes need to focus on what they're doing now for improving their performance in a race coming up this year. But what are you doing now to help improve recovery and repair so you're not, struggling going up the stairs or walking up a hill as we get older, and speed up that aging process, because exercise, especially endurance exercise, is not optimal for your health. I did so many Ironmans and marathons and 50K trail runs that I can't even count. I don't even know how many I did of races, but it's that oxidative stress, the damage we put in our body. And really what I say each time is that we need to be fit and healthy from the inside out, which is why I became a nutritional therapy practitioner. And then I became an FDN practitioner so I can order functional lab testing to add into my coaching program, because I couldn't get people healthy by just changing what they're eating and then their exercise. They really have to look at what I call the holistic method, that I'm working on their stressors, external and internal, and those hidden stressors we don't know about without lab testing. And then, movement, mobility training, and how we eat, when we eat is so important, as well as what we eat. So, I think that's so essential to look at that whole picture, that holistic type of style of coaching athletes to really perform their best in life as well as their sport.
Yeah. I mean, think about this, Debbie, is that we never get anything for free, right? So in today's world of medicine and consumer devices and apps and all that stuff, nothing's for free. This is kind of weird though. If you think about it, my focus was on inflammation and performance. Well, did I know that there was a cognitive improvement aspect initially? Certainly the science suggests that. Did I realize that my sleep would be better? Did I realize the impact of sugar and the damage that it does to your skin, and just making some simple improvements there, you look a little bit younger. Holy cow. The bags and all that stuff they're so related to what our body is using as a fuel and what our bodies were built to do. So all these kind of freebies that came with it now extend. We do a lot on the research side, from tumor reduction. Ketones are tumor toxic, but they're nutrients for other food, for other cells and things like that. So there's just so many aspects of this that are fascinating, and kind of a line of those three things. Is it vanity? Is it performance? Or is it overall health span, living longer, free of chronic disease? And the third one's got a lot of freebies, which is cool.
So like I have clients are coming to me that have insulin resistance, and then type 2 diabetes, and they're endurance athletes trying to train, switching on what they're eating. How can Biosense work? Let's talk about what this is and how this can help athletes dial in their nutrition and training, and those that have health issues as insulin resistant. Because I'm sure a ton of athletes do, because no one ever tests insulin. I always have to have people go order Ultra Lab blood marker test because the doctor won't test any of this stuff. So I'm assuming most people are insulin resistant or close to it. And then those that are type 2 diabetic have so much inflammation in their blood markers. And how can this help people's health and performance? We'll get to, but let's talk about what it is first.
Yeah. So Biosense, the device is, it measures, it's a medical device, class 1 medical device. It measures ketones through the breath. So ketones are an analyte. Acetone specifically, there's 3 types of ketones. And we should get into this later too, of what the difference between the 3 is, but it's, breath acetone is a ketone body. It comes out of your body. Acetoacetate is what's actually metabolized by the mitochondria. And then you have beta hydroxybutyrate, BHB. That's what you prick your finger with, okay, or you get a venous draw. That's a ketone body also. So the 3 different, and they have 3 different kind of uses, but they're all correlated. And we measure breath acetone, and we measure that one because, first of all, it goes hand in hand essentially with what is metabolized by the mitochondria. So it's the most accurate reflection of something that's not easily measured, acetoacetate. BHB is a great way to measure ketone levels. However, that is what your storage ketones are. So you see the Peter Attias of the world and others, and I'm like this too, that if you're fat adapted, you will store less and less BHB over time. So that measurement is kind of iffy. And also BHB can, when you work out, you're going to pull all that out of your bloodstream and convert that into energy. So measuring that, it will go down, whereas ketones in your breath and acetoacetate also will go up. So we chose breath acetone because that's our core technology. Not only that, but also it's just a really good reflection of what you're using as opposed to what you're storing, if that makes sense. So we measure it in breath, and it was designed so that you measure it as it changes throughout the day. This is critical, super critical. Our clinical trial in 2019 showed that ketones vary significantly, about 50% off of one measurement. We all know that as athletes. We know that we do something, your glucose will go up or down, your ketones will go up and down, but most people just check their ketones once a day and assume you're set. It's not like that. They do change. And it's critical to have the data to support your training. Or an example of folks that are borderline, they might have metabolic syndrome. I'm one of those right now, just like the people you're talking about, is that I did a lot of damage to myself with high carbohydrate intake for a long time. So I'm gradually reducing that and working on that. But I need to know what is that specific dose of ketosis, the dose that's really, really good for me for my workouts, really, really good for me. And I'm constantly tweaking that. So I want that area under the curve, right? I want to know the length and depth that has an impact on my day. And that day is my workout, inflammation in my knee post-workout, all the things like that. And everybody's different. So we provide the video of your fat oxidation or your lipid metabolism so you can keep tweaking.
So doing it with the breath test versus like a blood test for ketones, what is the difference?
Yeah.
You just mentioned that a little bit, but
yeah, a few different. So if you're if you're using blood to measure your ketone bodies, which is a really good proxy, a venous draw is what the gold standard is. A capillary draw is about 20% off that, but it's good, but you really should be doing it 4 or 5 times a day, 3, 4, 5 times a day if you want to have the picture, versus a video. And if you want a video, you need to be able to measure it as it changes, and that's what you want to do. I mean, I don't think athletes really like pricking their finger. A lot of people do it, 4 or 5 times before a workout, after the workout. We're trying to personalize. What we do is we personalize that activity by saying, this is where you are before, this is where you are after. And this maybe, the correlation of your workout and performance in the workout, or race too. It's just a constant tweaking. So, but the difference between BHB and breath acetone, like ketoacetate, will go up, meaning I'm burning fat. BHB will go down typically right when you start a workout because it's coming out of your bloodstream. So it's up to you to determine what is that accurate reflection. But I think we all want to know what are we metabolizing, and that's what we measure. What's being metabolizing. So that's the key thing. And does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I like just explain it a little bit more for people if they're not quite sure. So we have, like, I used to do metabolic testing cart back in the day, New Leaf metabolic testing cart starting back in 2005. And then it got sold to Lifetime Fitness, but we used to do it at rest with the face mask on, measure carbon dioxide, oxygen. And then you figure out their RER, the respiratory exchange ratio. So we could find out percentage fat for fuel versus carbohydrates. And then I could do that during exercise. I was on a stationary bike or treadmill. Sure. So how is this similar to a breath, monitoring it? So they do 10, 15 minutes lying down and a relaxed chair. Yeah. What's that data compared to a quick little breath? Sure. Inhale, exhale.
So good correlation, actually. So that was really all you could do, back then, and kind of, it was a good first step. The major difference is it's measuring a different gas in your mouth. That's measuring CO2. And oxygen. You got to measure both of those to have the ratio. Okay, so metabolic cart is great to tell you if you are burning fat, if you are burning carbohydrates. So it's the if. So and the reason why is that carbon dioxide will actually flatline as you enter a fully, like when you get into ketosis, you're going to get the same measurement on that metabolic cart, whether you're in high levels or low levels. So that you can't really tweak anything with that. It's just, you are kind of like, you have a fever, Debbie. You kind of want to know what's my fever, right? So then I can have actionable intelligence, what I need to do. That's the difference between the two right now. So there's some consumer devices out there that are doing a metabolic cart, or they track your CO2. They don't even measure the oxygen side of this. So they're not a real proxy of RER. But you probably have some real beginners that could be okay. Like, I just want to know, what am I burning? That's great. I think really in a performance athlete, like I need to know where I am so I can start to plot this out, and the correlation to my workout, my personal workout, not yours.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard to get metabolic testing cart because I know how expensive they are. And I know Pinoe's coming out with more of a portable testing kit that's more affordable for coaches or athletes, but also like New Leaf, when it got bought out, the other options were $25,000 for the high-end testing carts, and you'd have to go to that location and get it done. So I know it's difficult to find around the country. So something simple and easy to do, because I know people want, and what I'm doing as a coach is really personalizing a program, because there's not one size fits all. Everyone follow this nutrition program and training program to get the optimal results. So, really getting data, as I say all the time, test and not guess, to figure out, okay, how does food affect me? How does stress affect me? How is my sleep? going to impact my ability to burn fat. And if I'm trying to lose weight, if I'm trying to improve my performance in endurance sports, get stronger and faster, and of course that, recovery. So I have improved aging process. Yeah. I think it's important to figure out what data we can collect to implement into kind of, I say, putting the pieces of a puzzle together for a client's individualized coaching program to figure out what's best for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, that's one aspect of it too. And then that extends into, if you think about it, like I was always tweaking my numbers and I needed to really know, I was going too far on the spectrum of not having, like using fat as my primary fuel. Now I'm realizing that I need to have, I'm dosing glucose versus fat. I'm only dosing that. That's what I'm doing is like, where do I need to optimally be to get an additional couple miles or something like that, or a few seconds off that. So it's a constant tweak, and knowing that, hey, what fuel you're burning doesn't really matter in that regard. I need to know exactly what that percentage is. How far am I in my ketone, in ketosis? You don't have to be, this isn't necessarily the ketogenic diet to be high in a weight loss thing, which is great too, but I need to know exactly where I am in these lower levels too. And our device, the Biosense device is the only clinical grade device that can track that. So, it's used in research and pharma research and a bunch of clinics too. So I think that's a key thing is to know what you get too.
So I think easier to start with, like, go through what ACEs are and what it measures. And then I want to break that down into, if someone's trying to lose weight, how do they use this? If someone's trying to improve performance in endurance events, are metabolically efficient, as well as metabolically flexible, because a lot of times people are the all or none. They're realizing, well, hopefully they don't realize that they do need carbs still, and carbs are not evil. It's what kind of carbs you choose is bad, and when to time those carbohydrates to improve your backup fuel tank for your rocket fuel. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of athletes. And then, of course, recovery and pair for longevity purposes. So explain when we do the breath, I kind of did a little video, how you'll take inhale and then exhale in here. Yep. And then what are ACEs?
Yeah, sure. So the device itself is meant to be used multiple times per day. So you get that, the curve, the area under the curve, or your trend line based on what you do, what you eat, or your exercise. So that's the key thing. The device itself is handheld. It's, you blow into it like a balloon. It, essentially there's the patent in that is the process. And that is that your lung is full of ambient air, right? So it's almost all you breathe in, you're actually breathing out what you just breathe in. There's just a small bit of that interacts with your lung tissue, your alveolar tissue. So the patent that we have is that we only measure, this is the difference between like a device you'd buy off Amazon or anything like that. That's not a medical device, So our patent is that we only measure the last 2 cc's of your breath. So you see those, you blow into it like, but you also notice that there are vibrations as you're blowing, and it can hear that it's at the end of your breath, and it's pulling into a pump is pulling in just those last 2 cc's, and it's going to give you a measurement. Okay. And that measurement is in ACEs, and that's a 0 to 40. 0 would mean I'm burning carbs. Okay.
Oh, I was showing this on the intro, but the little chart that comes with it helps visual. Yeah.
And ACEs really are a reflection. It's an algorithm that we have that's reflective of parts per million of acetone. So by having that data in a real simple format, 0 to 40, I can tell you what those kind of ranges are. Is that, obviously when you start to get to 1 or 2 or 3, you're starting to produce ketone bodies. Yeah. I'm going there. You get to 5, you're burning fat as your primary fuel. Okay. Mitochondria is converting those fatty acids from, lipolysis into fat oxidation.
So when you're at 5, but if you're 1 to 4 and it says trace ketones, you're not burning fat as well, you're starting not as high.
Yeah, you're starting to, but you wouldn't be what we would say in a ketosis state of fat. So again, me personally, I'm in kind of a 3 to 7 range typically. I'm going in and out of that, but I'm not trying to lose weight either. So
it's out. When you're saying out, is that like under 5 because you're trace ketones, but you're still burning fat if you're showing any ketones, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So you've got some fat that could be used as fuel. You're producing ketones. You're always going to prioritize glucose, so really when you think about fat oxidation, it's, you go through your glucose stores, then your glycogen stores, and then you get to burning fat as your fuel. So your body is kind of tinkering on that when you get to about 5. And even though you're producing ketone bodies, your mitochondria now is making that switch and saying, I am going to burn fat as my primary fuel. So you can kind of go back and forth. You know, people talk about the keto flu. That's this, hey, my mitochondria is doing it for the first time. You dehydrate it, blah, 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 blah. So it kind of, it really depends. Now, there's some good research that it could be lower. You know, as you get fat adapted, that could be lower where you're starting to primarily use fat as your fuel. And it could be as low as like 3 or 4 over time. So it could be easier. So weight loss tends to be in a 5 to 15 mode. You know, I mean, you know, the obesity clinics that use this, they've got a ton of success just because of the gamification, right? Meaning like, I can blow a 1, well, then I can blow a 2. And if I can blow a 2, I can get to 5 and start burning my stored body fat. You know, whether it's from my liver, my visceral fat up here, I've got a beer belly, or from subcutaneous tissue. So that's it. I mean, and then you've got your cognitive improvements and your inflammation are a little bit higher. So really critical for recovery. This is my story, was that when I was getting into higher levels of ketosis, you know, that's when you're kicking into the prevention of inflammasomes assembling. So NLRP3 is an inflammasome that through carbohydrate restriction and getting into a higher level of ketosis, that's where it's preventing that inflammation. That's where it gets really, really interesting for me personally and many others when it comes to recovery and swelling and things like that. That was my magic spot, just to get there, because exercise is going to, you know, deplete my glycogen stores anyway, right? So, and I don't have a lot of carbs, but I'll kind of burn through the carbs, and then I'll get into glycogen stores, and then I'm into burning fat as my fuel. I got to make sure I have enough fat though, because I don't want to lose weight. And then all of a sudden I'm tackling two birds with one stone. You know, it's like I feel so much better, you know, after a workout, and the inflammation isn't there because I have a higher level. So I've burned I burned through it, so my ketones are already higher, and by doing that, I have less inflammation. So it's kind of cool.
So moderate ketosis, the 10 to 29 range is what you're talking about for more inflammation. And then if you're high ketosis, 30 to 40 numbers, you're looking for more metabolically damaged people. Yeah,
you're gonna, like, epileptics tend to be up there. You know, I would say that 98% of our users, be it patients or, you know, performance athletes, they're going to be in a, you know, probably 3 to 20 range. Okay. All right. So, you know, Zach Bitter, for example, he's,
I just talked to him yesterday.
I did. Yeah. So he's his biosense studies and his research, and his, his workout. And he's, you know, he has a lot more, I think he's almost exclusively fat for the most part, and, in his training at least. So, you know, he's going to be at a higher level, obviously. So it's to each his own. I mean, I just don't think there's a right or wrong way. Do you?
No, I always am curious of, so many athletes are the stereotype type A driven, high charging individual. I always say they overachievers. So if you tell them something is good, everyone, what do? Take it to the extreme. And now we're in this kind of range, like how much is the right amount for you, because you are a unique individual, and let's figure out what's the right amount, especially for the female athlete. So everyone's like too low carb because they're following the guidelines for ketosis for non-athletes. So they're just sticking with the 50 grams, and they're afraid to go to 100 grams of carbs, even though that might improve their performance and still keep them in ketosis. And female athletes are not supposed to be in ketosis around ovulation and their late luteal phase. So, you know, really dialing in the nutrient dense nature's food sources of carbohydrates at appropriate times for females. But I'm finding athletes are scared, thinking all carbs are bad and knowing how to do it. So using this tool might help them experiment, make it more of an individualized food program, and they're training to figure out, like, how do you adjust your macros, what you're eating to get, say, I just need to be 5 to 9, but maybe post workout on a long training weekend and my recovery day, say, is Monday, I should strive to be in the moderate ketosis 10 to 29 because I want to recover and reduce inflammation that day. So, I mean, is it like changing it up every day, or, you know, mapping out the cycle for the female athlete? I mean, you can really get geeked out on, what to use the data.
I mean, what do we do? I mean, here's the obesity market, and this totally then extrapolates into a performance athlete. The obesity marketplace, where you're trying to you're focused on lowering your insulin. And by lowering your insulin, you can take fatty acids, they come out of your cells, right? Whether it's your subcutaneous adipocytes, or it's coming out of your fatty liver, which is the worst of all, or it's this visceral, just overall visceral thing that comes from, sugar and processed foods, the beer belly. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to get it out of there. That's lipolysis, and it's out. Now it's out. That's fantastic. It doesn't metabolize yet, right? When that mitochondria, which by the way, there's mitochondrial biogenesis. Mm-hmm. If you become metabolically flexible, all of a sudden you're regenerating your mitochondria. Isn't that great? Okay. Your tissue, if you're getting higher levels of ketosis, you're also finding yourself in autophagy, where stronger cells are, using weaker cells and absorbing them, kind of eating them essentially. Whole different topic of conversation right there. So in the background, your body's being built for performance just by doing this anyway. But the bottom line is you and I are going to react differently to a banana.
Yeah.
Okay. Our mitochondria strength will be different. Our ability to take fats and quickly convert them in a metabolic flexible way will be different. And until you tweak and tweak and tweak, it's going to be different. It's not like having a different pair of running shoes, right? You're going to have a tiny little bit of difference in, your performance. And now bike is a different case, but I mean, you're talking about some serious tweaking of what our nutrients are, and it's just different for everybody. I guarantee you and I eat a banana, look at our glucose. Our glucose level will be very, very different reaction.
I'll be like 300.
Yeah. And it's just very different, and that's the reality of it. That's what we do. We try to create the video so that you can tweak it.
Okay.
And it's the only difference between glucose reduction, which is a great way to stop additional damage, on the health span side. Mm-hmm. Ketosis is where the damage is undone. That's where the disease reversal occurs. That's where weight loss is. That's all those things like that kind of go hand in hand,
So if you're using this with a CGM or taking your glucose with, Keto Mojo, or you're using, say, NutriSense, what are you looking for? Are you if you're really trying to dial in your nutrition program and how your unique body responds to different foods, as a banana or, like sourdough bread with avocado, and what happens to your glucose? Do you want to do that as well? Or you just think, measuring the ketone on the breath test here with Biosense helps enough to figure it out?
You can't. I mean, let's put it, they're two completely different metabolites, right? So I would say glucose is a great way to first figure out what's kind of screwing you, right? Like, what are the foods that particularly impact you? I learned that oatmeal, well, actually this is more ketones, but I mean, oatmeal increases my blood sugar, obviously, but for a long time, for 3 days, I cannot produce ketones if I have oatmeal. Okay. So I'm kind of screwed there, but my CGM tells me, hey, it goes up and it's kind of down. That's fine. But the long-term impact, I need my Biosense to share that with me of what are the things that are hurting my performance. So glucose is a great way to say, monitoring glucose or CGM is, okay, for the first couple of weeks, figure out what you're having the impact to. But for fat oxidation, this is a lifelong journey there. So I would say, what are those 4 or 5 foods, or what are the things you can kind of figure that out? I used to wear CGM, and I kind of figured it out after about a month, and then I'm good. I get it. I understand what I need, what happens. But mitochondrial biogenesis is not with glucose reduction, right? That's in ketosis. My cognitive improvements, inflammation, that's not in glucose reduction, which is really just a proxy for insulin. For me, it was lipolysis, meaning like get the fat mobilized, but it's not actually in the mitochondria and metabolized. That is on the ketone. So much of the good stuff is on the ketone side. And I think that's our focus right now. And, but we have a lot of users that use CGM for a little bit and then
figure that out.
Yeah.
So if they're trying to lose weight, because I see, and I know my own body as I have perimenopausal, probably blame the hormones, but it's harder to lose weight. And the people, there's a lot of athletes I see that, hopefully that's why they changed to low carb than the high carb athletes, because they're not losing weight and they're doing all that, what I say, air quote, right things. And they're still over fat, like mafetone and Paul Erson would call like the fit and fat, and that they're still not losing weight, but they're exercising and they're trying to tweak their nutrition. But for fat loss and using this, someone that's exercising, but need the nutrition support, because they're still trying ketosis, but they're missing something, which I would say stress impacts all of this, and lack of sleep. But what would you say, you're saying for fat loss, their goal would be like the 5 to 9 range and adjust their nutrition or their fasting or both to get into that 5 to 9 range, or is that higher?
Right. So I'm a male.
To lose weight.
Yeah, I'm a male, but I would say that my body has changed dramatically. Some of this for the better, just through knowledge and understanding the metabolic process. But there are changes, and all of us go through these changes. So I think that, yes, for most people, from a weight loss protocol, it would be seeking a 5 to 20 is fine. Okay, that you're gonna lose weight there. Okay, getting there is going to be the challenge. I would say this is that fasting is just bona fide the best way to do it. Okay, what we see, because you have so much control over it. You're not eating for a specific time, and I used to do a time, like I want to fast once a month for 48 hours. Actually, it was 72 hours. Well, now I realize like the benefit is in a specific level of ketosis. So I need 24 hours in an exact zone, which is above 15 for me. So I would say that if you kind of target, I'm going to do what I need to do to get over a 5. And what you probably notice with our app is you actually get a ketone score, and that is your depth. Okay. Yeah. Your depth of ketosis, meaning like how deep you are in ketosis, and the length. It's a product of that, meaning this is your dose of ketosis. So you'll start to see, hey, my daily dose of this kind of magical drug called ketosis. What is the dose that correlates with weight loss to me? And it might be a little higher for you. It might be a little lower for you. Okay. So it's a constant tweak of that regimen. And for me personally is that it came down to specific foods. And I started like, okay, dairy. Why is dairy having such a negative impact? Then you pull I pulled dairy out of my, out of what I do. And it had a pretty good impact,
Yeah. So I just pulled up the app. So before we go there, I just want to add in, because I know people are like me. If you hear fasting gives you more of the benefits, again, we think more is better. We have to control that. Let's be more specific for the athlete who's working out once, twice, 3 times a day. When you are doing prolonged fasting, more than 12 to 15 hours, that should be on our low intensity recovery day. Yeah, for sure. And not do 3 hard workouts and push yourself too much, because you will cause more stress to your body rather than the benefits. And then the female athlete will raise that kisspeptin hormone that we were talking about. So I want to make sure, because I was doing way too much fasting. I think a lot of my hormone issues last few years kind of relapsed down to the negative side because I was doing OMAD too much and fasting, because you feel full, you're not hungry. And I'm, superwoman. I can go all day and not eat, and I can swim, and I can run with my client, and I can lift weights in the morning and do all this. So I always have to clarify, because that's kind of my current mission right now. Let's be more specific when it's appropriate to do that fasting, because it does cause great benefits, but make it your easy walk, easy swim.
Yeah, I can show you that. My personal protocol is that fasting is the centric part. So I actually don't do any endurance work in those 2 or 3 day fasts that I'm talking about. None at all. I will do it right in the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
To clear up my glycogen stores. And I do this. And again, that's a very occasional thing that I do for inflammation and autophagy. So kind of the long game stuff. Yeah. There's no way I would do that. I mean, I need fuel. So,
but I think we need to, whenever you say that, just my suggestion, if you could help spread this word, because I think endurance athletes are doing this weight fasting too much, and it's becoming an issue for a lot of people coming to me with looking at their labs, and they're not looking at like, oh, I need to change how I train when I'm doing that fasting because I want to lose weight.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance of what it is. So just to each his own, and part of this is like when you say lose, key thing here too is like losing weight is, there's really 3 obesities, right? There's the worst of all is liver fat. That's fatty liver disease. And you might have a pound of that, which is extremely damaging. You and I could have that right now. We're not going to see that right now. You'd be diagnosed with that through labs and things like that. But right now, somebody could be cruising around and be extremely unhealthy. All right. And then you have your visceral fat. That's the belly in front. Why is it in front? Well, it's extremely dangerous there. And you only need about, probably 7 or 8 pounds where it becomes really, really dangerous. And then your sub-Q, which is what we see. That's the vanity stuff. That's, Robert Lustig is a great advisor of ours. And 22 pounds really is about the level that it gets dangerous, but under that, it's really not. It's our body's ability to say, hey, let's take it out of the bloodstream. Let's store it right here in my arms or right here or my butt or whatever it ends up being. That's not necessarily, it's not nearly as dangerous actually as having like 10 pounds of visceral fat or a pound of liver fat. So we've got to really understand that difference of like, what is the healthy side of this versus vanity? And that's why I think Biosense kind of has a good fit there of like, what's important to me? What do I want to address? What's the specific type of obesity that I'm actually trying to target? It's not really obesity, but let's say just a little bit overweight. You're a guy that's running marathons and you're, 10 pounds overweight right here in the belly. You think that's acceptable and healthy. It's not. That is not.
I know.
Okay. And it's under what we would consider overweight or obese. So you're metabolically very unhealthy, but don't qualify for anything else.
Yeah, so true. So I just saw the time. I could talk about this for hours, but I want to get into performance. So that was more about fat loss. And the second part is performance, and then finish up longevity, recovery, repairs in there. So for the athlete, how can they use Biosense to improve performance, to be burning fat? And the question is, is it necessary to show what higher level when you are exercising or after, timing wise? And, if we can use this for metabolic flexibility, strategic carb timing, and cyclical keto. So let's kind of dive into that big topic.
Yeah. So I think those last 3, cyclical keto to really, somebody that might do, ketogenic diet, for example, or whatever. We don't care. We're not a keto company. We're whatever it is to put you into a fat oxidative state. Biosense is perfect to monitor where you are. If you don't know where you are, then it's hard to make any behavior adjustments. Number 1. Number 2, for metabolic flexibility, that really is the goal. Okay. It really is the goal. I mean, I'm sure if you're trying to lose a lot of weight, like we're talking about, yes, you might want to stay in ketosis for a vast majority of time, cycling it out. So without knowing where you are in that process, it really is very, very difficult, almost impossible to say, I've got a plan, because it's not a data-driven plan, right? It's no different saying, hey, everybody should do 10,000 steps. Where's that from?
Yeah.
Kind of like we'd run, 15 years ago, and everybody would run the same amount, like, hey, this is what you burn. Here's your caloric expenditure in your run based on what? I don't know.
Yeah.
Some algorithm. So it's just having data, and the endurance athlete happens to be one that invests in data to really support their personal tweaks, but it's so personal. So in the performance side of this, I can't even begin to comment on, hey, what is the most appropriate, mix of carbohydrates and fat as your fuel? Because number 1, your metabolism and how you take those, even if you and I had equal amounts, the prioritization of this is just going to be different. It's going to be your glycogen store. It might slip into glycogen stores much easier. There's so many things that can happen. Your lipolysis mobilization might be faster, but it keeps circulating and goes back into stored fat as opposed to being metabolized, fat oxidation. So it's different for everybody. And I can only say that, as an athlete, we're trying to tweak our nutrition now that we kind of have a pretty good idea that nutrition plays such an important role in our ability to keep working out or shave off a few seconds. we just help validate that tweak. How about that? Validate that tweak.
Yeah.
And start to correlate with data that so it's not about, hey, you need to be in high level of ketones. Maybe you don't. Maybe you need to be in low levels. But where you are can then start to guide you of what that balance is based on your objective. And it might be a little bit of weight loss and, longer workouts or something like that.
Well, the goal is to burn higher percentage of fat when you're exercising, right? So we want to say, keep the way we train, but what we eat, and matching that together to optimize our fat oxidation rate and get it a higher number. So when we are exercising or, in a race, we're burning high levels of fat over carbohydrates, and we can go longer, as S Fuels talks about, go longer. And Dan Plews talks about how to be more metabolically efficient and burn that fat, and how we could tweak that training and fueling program with Biosense to figure out how can I improve my fat burning, right? So
exactly.
Fat oxidation. So I'm curious, I'm always struggling to remember to do this like an hour after I exercise. Should I do this? Whoops, I just turned it on. So how do we use this when we're exercising to figure out, okay, I mean, would we do it after a workout to see if I was burning enough fat, and how, like, if I'm training by heart rate?
Yeah. So I would do it before. I would do it before to know what your baseline is. Okay. For work. So this is a little bit different than food, obviously. So I would look at, because it's exercise with food or it could be exogenous, but that has such a quick hit. Exogenous ketones. But let's just say that nutrition and exercise are the two that can move you into this fat oxidative state, right? That's what we want. We want to burn fat for our fuel. And taking a measurement before you work out, taking a measurement after you work out, and then especially early on, do it again a couple hours after this, and because you're going to be oxidizing fat for the rest of the day. I mean, 24 hours, because your oxygen intake still increases, right? Mm-hmm. After your workout, you're still bringing in more oxygen. So it's, you're going to see, like, in the long workout, you can keep your ketones up for a while, after that, unless you're, throwing a ton of carbs in. So it's pretty interesting. The key thing that we know that at 90 minutes in a workout, you can see a very big shift, meaning, like, let's say you and I both ate a meal right before our workout. Okay. Or you ate a meal before our workout and I ate before our workout. We're going to kind of be burning the same amount of fat type of thing for 90 minutes. But where it really diverges is at 90 minutes, you're starting to see that those that did not have a fuel source, right before they worked out, you're going to have much higher fat loss right there. So kind of getting back, like, hey, I want to have performance. Also, I want to learn, lose some, a little bit of weight too. That you may want to think about that, like bringing your intake of food 3 hours before. Try that. I mean, there's ways to tweak that. Try that then before, right before you eating something before you work out. That's what a lot of people see right now is that, okay, I'm going to eat a little bit beforehand and then, like 3 hours before. It's just a difference for everybody. And then track that, really, like, first few days, track this every 2 hours, see what happens. And then do it again with it. Yeah.
So we just have to remember, though, because on my directions here it says wait 60 minutes to use after eating. Well, I don't smoke or vape or drink flavored beverages, but with coffee, because I just was sipping on coffee with some mushroom adaptogens in it. And then, you're not supposed to have chewing gum or lip balm and, brush your teeth or anything. So timing wise, if I say, example today, what I do, I lifted weights this morning and then I did a speed run, 45 minutes, but then I had some coffee. So I can't test when I get home because I just had some coffee with heavy cream.
Yeah. So I would say, I wouldn't worry so much. I mean, again,
what impacts it, I
you'll
guess.
Figure out, but I mean, coffee does nothing to me or anybody in the office here.
When you do your test, so you can have coffee and test this. Cause I didn't know, like, okay, I just sip water. I can't do it. I mean, you can't have anything, or what's the criteria, what you can't have.
Yeah. So one of the key things gets back to, like, beta hydroxybutyrate and ketone bodies in your breath is that when you eat something, in blood ketones, it's pretty fast. It could be within a half an hour, whereas your breath ketones are more of what's actually happening. So again, blood ketones are like hey, coming out of your blood. Okay. Whereas, and then it's metabolized as acetoacetate and then it's expelled as acetone. Okay. And those two together, it takes about on average, probably an hour and a half for most people with breath ketones. So it's faster for most with a BHB measurement. Okay. But again, it's not a venous one. That's going to be a really accurate one. So the impact of food, we always recommend, like, take a measurement before you eat, do another one before you eat dinner, like one before lunch, one before dinner, and then when you go to bed. Okay. Because ketones don't do this like glucose. It's a pretty smooth curve, meaning like 3 to 5 measurements a day, you're going to catch that curve. Right. But in the applications we're talking about of like tweaking workouts, I would be doing this before you eat. Maybe that's 2 hours before your race. I would do it before before the race. I would do it right after. And some people do it during. Like, I want to know my ketone levels while I'm in a race. It's portable, right? Just take it with you. You don't need to take it with you and take a measurement. I do that all the time. I run in Forest Park here in St. Louis, and I'm so fascinated by what happens and how quickly my ketone levels can go up.
I'm doing a half marathon this Sunday in San Diego, and it's so humid right now that I think it'd be soaking wet. If I had it in my short pocket, it might not be good. But I'm just curious on, like, here's an example. I ate sliced chicken and some cheese at, say, hour and 45 minutes ago. It's around 9 a.m. my time. And it's 10:54 right now. And I'm going swimming at noon. So I try to time kind of like, trying to eat 9 or 10 a.m. because I can't eat before I swim. And then I could just not eat at all and eat later. But I think that's too long of time not eating enough for myself. But so I'm experimenting with my timing and what I eat when. But then I'm only like a 3 to 5 on here. So is that like, okay, is that too much protein, or like, why would I be low and shouldn't I be higher? I mean, what impacts your numbers are going to be different for everyone, but anything like, is it just because I had something to eat, or is it because I worked out? What changes it?
Yeah. So, a couple of things. Just at a high level, I would always recommend, don't use the number as a measurement of success or not. Because again, maybe that's the appropriate place for you. I don't know.
Again, we're competitive people. We think more is better. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I want a 7. I want to be in the upper range and burn fat. So what am I doing wrong is what people think, like me.
Yeah. So, I thought, everyone's going to have that, like, I got to get there. I would be more focused on, like, hey, if I'm seeing that, maybe let's just say 5 as an example. Like, I want to be in this low levels of ketosis where I've got some ketone bodies. I'm using that as my primary fuel. I'm a carb restrictive athlete. And maybe that's your target. Look at things like creamer. Do you use Keto Brains? Is that the product you use for your coffee?
No, I like those. I've been trying, because someone in my house that might be married to me works for Laird's Superfoods. So I've been doing Laird's unsweetened creamer, but it's coconut and MCT oil and some mushroom adaptogens. But I still haven't weaned myself off heavy cream, so I blend them together.
There you go. So the cream has a big impact. Cream can really, for me, the
even though it's fat, the mostly fat is still the heavy cream.
It's got a sugar in there too. So
organic heavy cream, I never think it's
lactose. Lactose is a sugar. So I think that it depends. I mean, that's the weird thing. It's just like, what is the weird thing that's for me? Oatmeal to me, creamer to me.
I'm ultra sensitive to everything though, so I'm the high maintenance person.
It's
a special case.
And then of course it's cortisol levels. I run a company. We have research going on all over the world right now. That's really important, for chronic disease reversal and things like, tumor reduction and things like that. So there's just a lot of stress. So my cortisol levels can be sky high. And if that's the case, I cannot convert fatty acids into a fuel source. Just can't, So what does that mean? Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
So then I have to, then you work backwards from there. For me to do that means then I need to reduce stress, which means I need to run. Right? And to run, okay, that's where I get my clarity, mental clarity to deal with these things like this. And here's a kind of funny anecdote. My whole marriage, my wife would always say to me, you need to go for a run. And that wasn't for my physical benefit.
Yeah. Chill out.
That was when she could tell, like, you're stressing me out. You're making me mad. You need to go for a run. And just over when you're married long enough, you figure that out. It's like when he goes for a run, he comes back and he has no stress.
Yeah.
He's in his happiest place. He has his runner's high. Well, what is a runner's high? Maybe it's,
Yeah, but not go over 45 minutes because that your cortisol increases after 45 minutes or so. So keep that run 30 to 45.
Yeah.
I know, but that's what my whole story is. And I wrote a book about it called Life is Not a Race, It's a Journey. What happened to me is chronic stress. And I was doing, as I said, all the right things, but I still gained 30 pounds without changing anything and being low carb and fasting and training and, doing all the yoga and HIIT and whatever. I was doing it all, but I suddenly was like fat for me and I couldn't exercise. So I was like, okay, why is my whole body changing? Cortisol.
Got it. Exactly. It's different for everybody.
Yeah. So I know last little bit here, longevity, recovery, the athlete really needs to watch inflammation because as we said, over 45 minutes, doesn't always give us the best benefits for health in the long run. How can this help us?
Yeah. So, and by the way, my workouts are limited to 50 minutes. Interesting. Yeah. Except biking. I'll do that for a few hours, obviously. So how does this help you with that? Is that, it all gets back to the same thing. What's my objective? Is it vanity? Is it overall wellness and all the goodies, those free goodies to get? Is it just performance? Whatever that ends up being. If it's performance, there's some type of workout that goes with that. For me to work out, I need to do it efficiently and effectively. And I need to do it in a way that might be different if I want to have a better time or I want to, have less discomfort at the end of it. So I think that more than anything is use Biosense to start to build your story. And your story is, I need more information about myself. Okay. I know what I'm eating. Okay. I don't know what happens when it goes inside. I know how far I'm running. I know how fast I'm running. Okay. And I know the pain that happens after that. I don't know why. Okay. That's the difficult thing to see what's going on inside. But if I can accurately measure initially glucose maybe, and then where I am in this journey of fat metabolism, I can then correlate it to my times. I can correlate it to weight loss. I can correlate it to how I feel. For me, that's the most important thing is like how I feel holistically, not just inflammation in my knees, and understand what that dose is. Dose it up a little bit, dose it down a little bit. Just like eat a little bit more, eat a little bit less. How's that feeling? So we can really accurately dose food. It's hard to dose fat, of what's actually metabolized. I can say, hey, I'm going to take a spoonful of coconut oil. That's great. Well, this is what's going in. That doesn't mean that's being metabolized.
Correct.
Right. So let's just take this one step further and say, I want to know what's actually being metabolized or if it's being metabolized.
Yeah. Jay Feldman has great info. He's been researching on it's more energy metabolism. It's not like it's carb metabolism as well as fat metabolism, but it's like what's broken in your body that you're not having good energy metabolized from your food that you eat.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I think a lot of times people go to keto and they start just eating sticks of butter and, a pound of coconut oil
right.
and their coffee, like I used to do 10 years ago whenever Bulletproof coffee started, I would drink it by the pitcher and that's what I drink all day. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing that. I put so much butter in there and coconut oil, MCT oil, whatever I did, and just live off of that till you have a meal.
Yeah.
But less is more.
It's one of the hardest things. One of the hardest things is like, how do we get healthy fat that you can grab? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just grab it and have it and eat it. And so,
but this would be interesting too, because the whole research more coming out, thanks to Dr. Gabrielle Leon on protein synthesis and protein muscle is an organ in longevity and hitting your protein macros, starting with your goal body weight in grams of protein a day and putting 30 to 50 grams in spread out throughout the day, like 3 times, hitting that protein goal. If we want to repair and rebuild muscle and improve the aging process. But, it used to be the fear of keto is that, if I have too much protein, I'm going to have gluconeogenesis and I'm going to kick myself out of ketosis. But now it's like, okay, everyone went, one extreme just all fat, nothing else. And now no carbs. And now we're like, okay, let's focus on protein. So it's more keto carnivore. So It'd be interesting how
agree. I
Biosense can
totally
figure
agree.
that out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I can tell you one of the things that we mentioned, like we can't give medical advice, obviously. We have Chief Medical Officer Naomi Perella from Rush University in Chicago, but we don't give medical advice at an individual level to users. One of the things I would say we do privately and that we do just based on experience. I'll just share this like an experience because I can't say that is that one of the most common ways that people seeking weight loss plateau or regress is that their fat levels are too high versus protein. So we know that, to burn through glucose and then glycogen stores, that's a glucose issue, carbohydrate issue. But tweaking those and having less fat and more protein is a very, very effective way for many people to then continue that journey on. Because you could, and those are people that like in their, hey, I used to be in the high 20s, and with Biosense, now I can't get over a 10. Over time, it's decreased. And we kind of say to our friends and family and those that we do kind of have these conversations with, and it's like, why don't you just decrease your fat by, a third and increase your protein, see what happens for a week, something like that. So there's one of the things. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think I always laugh because I've been in this industry, I don't know, 15 years. And so it's funny kind of to see this like ping pong back and forth, like, all right, what are we going to be on to now? Now it's protein. And it makes sense to me. So I totally on board. And I love what Dr. Gabrielle Leon is saying in her research and she's sharing. And it makes sense because people went like 100% fat, as I said, and scared of any carbs. But last question, we didn't touch, I'm just looking at my comments over here on my iPad. HIIT exercise. If people are doing high intensity interval training or like a speed workout, how can we use this to figure out our like adding in more carbs post workout, if the right amount, because that's what I think is confusing for people and they're afraid they're going to gain weight if they add too much carbs. And I keep trying to tell people it's not carbs from refined flour, processed packaged crappy food. It's eating like root vegetables, potatoes. What could this do to help us figure out if we're doing a high intensity anaerobic workout?
Right. And that's like my workouts personally. So it's the same principles of knowing your reaction. So you could, take a measurement before, take a measurement after, another 2 hours after, another 2 hours after. Okay. Compare that to a day that you're actually not working out at all and just kind of see if is there some structure to a curve that is, hey, this is lasting longer and longer because it's a higher intensity, shorter workout. And then take measurements. It's all about how are you metabolizing this? So maybe during the workout too. So it's really the same principles of a long workout is just starting to get knowledge. We don't build a protocol that says, hey, for short workouts, this is where you should be. That's ridiculous. What we can say is that start to put together this ketone score, the score that we give you, and, based on your length and depth of ketosis, and start doing some self-experimentation. Is this helping me? Do I feel better? Most importantly, right? Mm-hmm. And is it helping me in getting through that workout? Right.
Yeah. Would that be like, I'm thinking just low ketosis is good enough or just trace ketones because you're just trying to oxidize more fat. And then I want to get enough carbohydrates in from real food sources to replace that muscle glycogen. So it's not the goal to stay in ketosis all the time. That's where it gets it's like, okay, right. People are trying to dial in their nutrition post workout if they're doing a higher workout or doing a 2-a-day workout, and they're afraid of getting out of ketosis. But is that the goal? We're not supposed to be in nutritional ketosis all the time. So mild or trace is probably okay, and you'll get back in it.
Yeah, it's don't chase the numbers. Just make sure that everyone has a magic number, and you and I are not going to have the same kind of target. We have different metabolism. So it's, we give a range on there you just picked up the user guide right there. It's a very general range. And that's a general range of what happens physiologically, when you're at different levels, ACE levels, but that doesn't mean anything for an athlete everyone's objectives are going to be a little bit different. We all kind of have weight management as a primary goal, but we kind of get that anyway through workouts. But, starting to tweak our carbohydrate intake and then the resulting level of ACEs to see, is this helping me over time? And it takes a while. Just you're starting to tweak it, but performance to me, this is for me. Performance isn't a better time. Performance is the experience, and that a big part of that experience is recovery. And if I can kind of cobble this all together and have an easy recovery, then my life outside of a workout is normal or better. Better.
Yeah.
Cognitive improvement. You know how it is. When we had a lot of carbs before and we lived off carbs, how tired you'd be at work and stuff like that. Like that was the norm.
Yeah, it's not normal.
Yeah.
I think it's normal. So it'd be great. I think I was emailing you this before, like Garmin to Training Peaks to integrate the data together, because there's so much data from different devices, and just using for coaches or practitioners, I've been using Practice Better to import people's information and data, but just to help fine tune everything.
Sure.
But having Training Peaks and have it be able to see one picture would be great. Cause I think, athletes trying to figure out when to eat, how much to eat, why, obviously you can't prescribe anything. It's so individual and test, and then tracking with heart rate variability, track with your heart rate and your workout and your speed, and be able to see all these biometrics. See, am I getting faster? Am I getting stronger? Am I recovering at a better level? My heart rate variability is getting improved overnight, and really looking at all this data, because we can geek out on all this information we can collect, but how to make it into one protocol to improve the whole you. From the inside out.
Exactly. Inside out. So critical.
Yeah. So anything else? We'll put everything in the show notes. And I know there's probably lots more questions, and people just need to buy their device and start experimenting and figuring out, what works best for them with their nutrition and matching their fueling and training together, help their recovery. And, I'm trying to get stronger and faster and get my speed back running is my personal goal. And I need to lose weight because my body's changing and I don't like it. So I'm trying to do things differently, because I would say that what's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So if you keep trying to do your version of keto or your training method and it's not working, you need to get something like Biosense to really figure out how I need to adjust this to get the desired results, because you're just wasting your time and energy and causing more stress if you can't figure it out on your own. So getting a coach, using a device, getting those measurements is so essential to getting results.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple things just to add is that, the app itself, we didn't talk about that at all, but the app has the ability to share with your coaches your entire lipid metabolic journey over the course of a month or a week or whenever your coaching sessions are, every single day. All that can be shared with your coach. It integrates with a number of other apps like Carb. There you go.
Yeah, I'll have to do my own little video to show, but it just has great articles on it now, and you can add in your fasting window, which obviously I didn't stop this because I've been fasting for 28 hours. So that's not true. And then you can add in your exercise, because what I was telling them, I need to correlate. I just did a bike ride. Here's my measurement before and after, and be able to see what I did and be able to write notes. So I think that's great. And then, getting all the data and figuring that out. And then like what I do with my VIP coaching clients is look at this and go, okay, this is what we need to adjust, course correct, or do again, right? Figuring out how to dial it in for you, because there isn't a one size fits all. And that's why I think we have to invest in these tools to figure out how we can individualize it to get results.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you so much. Where can people, we'll put the link to BioOne on the notes, but the website's Biosense. What's it?
It's My Biosense.
My Biosense.
Yeah, mybiosense.com.
All right. Good work. Thanks so much for putting up with all my 1,000 of questions and rabbit holes. And we'll get this up on the Low Carb Athlete YouTube channel, and we'll share on the audio podcast versions next month. So thank you so much, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.